So you want to get the best sound out of your Sony XM5 headphones. Here's how. First, launch the Sony Headphones app. If you haven't downloaded this yet, do so because you'll need it and you're missing a ton of functionality. Make sure also that your headphones are on, otherwise the app just won't connect. In the app, go into the Sound tab and scroll down to the Equalizer section. Tap on the Equalizer to view the settings list. Next, take a look at the settings. Sony has already included a number of presets that you can try out. If this is your first time modifying the sound, or seeing these settings for that matter, spend some time playing with these. It's one of the major strengths of these headphones, and you might discover something here that you really like. Pick a song or a podcast or an audiobook or whatever, then change between these while listening to it to hear some of the differences. Note that you can modify these presets, but I generally don't recommend it for most people, at least not until you understand what you're changing and why. My goal with these settings is to get as close as possible to the Harman target for headphones with the EQ in the Sony Headphones app. If you're not familiar, the Harman target is an average of what most people consider good sound in headphones. But the goal here isn't to get it perfectly, even if it were possible. The goal of this video is to use that as a starting point, then tune the headphones so they get you the best sound for you. For now, we'll stick to editing the manual, custom 1, and custom 2 settings. There's also the Sony DSEE Extreme, which upscales compressed music files for better sound. Find the manual setting and tap the gear icon. If you tend to listen with noise canceling on, here's what I did. I brought down the clear bass a couple of notches to make it less pronounced. The 400 Hz response is on target, so I left that alone. The 1 kHz response is a bit de-emphasized, so I boosted that a couple of notches. The 2.5 kHz response is very de-emphasized, so I boosted that by 4 notches. At the higher 6.3 kHz and 16 kHz levels, the XM5 get close to the Harman target, so I boosted these just 1 notch. By the way, if you're finding this useful, don't forget to click that thumbs up button and subscribe. It really helps the channel out. Here's what I use when the active noise canceling is off or if it's in ambient mode. The bass response is much more pronounced, so I brought down the clear bass a couple more notches to make it even less pronounced. The 400 Hz response remains on target, so I left that alone. The 1 kHz response is a bit de-emphasized, so I boosted that just a couple of notches. The 2.5 kHz response is less de-emphasized with the active noise canceling off, so I only boosted it by 2 notches. And the higher 6.3 kHz and 16 kHz levels, the headphones are pretty close to Harman target again, so I left those entirely alone. But you're not going to get the best sound for you from those. Here's how you get from good to great. To get the best sound, you need to understand what's happening here and why I did this. Fine-tuning your settings starts by understanding that what you're doing with the equalizer is raising or lowering the volume of that specific range. This is why you don't just want to take everything and make it higher or lower across the board. That's just called turning the volume up or down. Here's what I want you to do. Go back to a completely flat response. Put a song you really like on. Take all the EQ ranges and turn them all the way down. This will sound weird and muffled and weak, and that's the point. Next, take just one channel and turn it all the way up. Leave it there for maybe 10 to 15 seconds. Drop it back to 0, and then do that again for the next channel. Drop it back to 0, do it again for the next. Hear the difference? Sounds weird, right? But I bet you might be hearing things now that you've never heard before. So what do each of these ranges do exactly? We generally divide sound into 3 major areas: bass, mids, and treble. In the XM5, Sony emphasizes the bass or the lows, which gives a solid rumble. But the mids, especially the upper mids, are de-emphasized, and this is where all the voices and instruments sort of live. Sony then tries to make up for this by emphasizing the highest frequencies. This setup makes things sound exciting, but a bit muddy in the parts where voices and instruments all live. Starting with a clear bass response, these are the lowest frequencies, everything under 200 Hz, which is where things like bass guitars and tubas tend to roam. This is where you get your punch and your rumble. If you want more rumble, then move this higher, and if you want less, move it lower. I personally love bass, so I tend to push mine significantly higher. The thing is, even if you do that, if you take care of the higher frequencies, it won't sound as muddy. Next is the 400 Hz range. That's about where most human voices live, so if you want to emphasize the voice, you'll want to turn this up some. If you want to make your music more exciting, then you may want to boost up the bass some and turn this down a little bit. Personally, I love turning this up for classical music since it lets me hear the actual instruments better. Moving on to the 1 kHz range, if you want your music to sound a bit more clear and defined, turn this up. Now, turning this up too high above everything else can make it sound a bit harsh. After that, we have the 2.5 kHz range. Again, turn this up for additional clarity. This is the upper range for a lot of instruments and the human voice. It starts introducing some brilliance, especially for higher range acoustic instruments like violins and piccolos, since you'll capture more of their resonance here. There are a few instruments that are actually focused around this area, like the cymbals and the hi-hats, but most are focused way below this. If you want a more exciting sound, turn this up above the 400 Hz and 1 kHz range. A lot of emphasis here might make the music sound too sharp though, so it may rob some of the warmth. Be careful with it. So next is a 6.3 kHz range. This is a very high range. Turn this up if you want more brilliance and presence. Turning this too high though may also cause sibilance, which is an emphasis on things like the S sound. Finally, we have the 16 kHz range. The only notes up here tend to be hearing tests. Realistically, most adults can't hear this high, but we can absolutely feel it. And because of the way that the Sony Equalizer works, it also affects frequencies as low as about 10 kHz, which we can absolutely hear. It's very high, but we can hear them. Turn this up to create more sharpness at the upper edges, although there's a good chance that the difference you hear is minuscule and that the music you're listening to doesn't really even touch this range at all. If you just got your Sony XM5 not too long ago, you're still probably learning some about it. Click here to see my full review of the Sony WH-1000XM5. It's a comparison against the XM4, by the way, where you can hear microphone quality samples as well as comparisons of the different noise canceling modes in an airplane. And if you want to hear what other people have to say about it, well, I have a video for that too. Check it out.